Okay, we haven't got to be too specific here. It's just a general observation. I mean, who's noticing that they have 50% of each? Anyone got more skill sets listed than mindsets? So more mindsets than skill sets? So pretty much 100% of us. So, and no matter where I'm working, no matter what group I'm with, no matter what sector, right, that rarely, if ever, changes. Normally, you'll find there are more attitudinal mindset type answers in the list. In fact, at a point, I would suggest typically we tend to find around about 80% tend to be more mindset driven. That doesn't make it more important, it doesn't make it good or bad, it's just an observation. But it makes it relevant. If you're looking at performance, high performance, you can't ignore the mindset element. You've got to be good to be in the game, right? And this was the observation we made. We thought it was interesting because most organizations, when they want to affect performance or affect results, where do they tend to go when they want to develop people? They tend to go to skills. What percentage of their time do you think? Usually about 80%, which is interesting. 80% of the focus is on skills development, and the 80% of the list is on mindset. Now, I'm not saying one's more important. I've met plenty of people, right, who lack the relevant skills, but are highly motivated. I'm sure you have too, right? They lack the relevant skills, but highly motivated. I mean, effectively, idiots, right? No, but worse, highly motivated idiots, right? Dangerous to have around. Do you get X Factor? X Factor? It's like X Factor, the early shows, right? Where these poor kids actually believe they're going to dominate the world music scene, right? And because they've been told they're the best thing. And you go, I can't fault your determination. Your confidence is to be applauded. But you just can't sing. You can't ignore that, right? You have to have skill, right? You've got to be good, right? But and that's obvious. Our observation was being good isn't good enough. And this was a really interesting observation. Being good isn't good enough. Just because you're good at something, you can be world class in terms of talent and skills, and it just won't work. It doesn't deliver. Because circumstances suddenly start to shift the state of mind people are in. I'll give you an example outside of your world. If you went to I don't know, if golf was your interest, any sport, but I'll take golf. You go to a driving range in golf, any club in the world, a practice area, you'll see some people there, once they've warmed up a little bit, and they're hitting the ball straight down the middle of the range, perfectly, one after the other, perfect execution. You then follow them to the first tee, put a crowd of people around them watching, put some money on it, and then stand back. And oftentimes you'll see a very different level of performance here compared to the practice area 20 minutes earlier. Is that possible? Yeah. And you go, you clearly have the skills. Nothing to learn. You've shown us today you have the skills. But 20 minutes later, they're just not showing up. And the only thing that's relevant is what shows up. It's not what I can do, it's what I do, right? So there's got to be something in between those two moments that's relevant, over and above their capability. Now, the reason I mention this as leaders, as influencers, to affect performance, it's quite tangible to develop a skill. If I want to get better at something, I get a coach or a mentor, I go on a training program, I spend some time with you because you're good at it, and I watch you, I observe, right? And then I try ideas out. It's quite a tangible process. But to develop a mindset, it's less tangible, it's more abstract. Right? And think about this. My manager, when I worked for Aon in this corporate insurance, I had 8 years in sales. After a full day of rejection, I'd ring my boss up and I'd say, I've had a terrible day, I've sold nothing. In fact, I've lost business. I've got one more call to make. I'm going to rearrange for tomorrow. Now, in that moment, to affect my performance, he can't change my skill. But he would try and change my mindset. He'd try and motivate me. And he'd say, come on, Jim, make the call, finish on a high, and try and engage and inspire. And I go, yeah, look, I know what you're saying. I'll be fine tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. And then he'd say to me, I heard it 1,000 times. He's from Chicago. He'd say, come on, Jim, be positive. Be positive. Now, the problem with that is you can't argue with it. You can't go, no, right? But at the same time, that's not helping me. That's not helping me. I'm putting the phone down going, I know be positive. I want to be positive, but I'm just not feeling very positive. Do you know what I mean? Do you ever get those days when you think, I've worked hard and I've earned this depression and I'm going to have it, right? And the last thing I want to hear is someone saying, where's your determination? Where's your enthusiasm? I know the list. I understand that. It would be very helpful to be positive. But how do you do it? How do you switch it on in the moment? Right? I'll give you an example. You've got to put context into this because if you're going from the practice area to the first tee in life, it's different over here, right? there's more pressure, there's more expectation, there's more consequences. And because of those things, our response to that circumstance tends to affect how we react. So if I put context in, circumstances, sometimes things are easy, some things are challenging. When things are easy, it's not that difficult to control our mindset, right? When things are easy, favorable circumstances. When things are difficult, a little more challenging to affect mindset, both ours and our teams. I'll give you an example. Has anyone done a parachute jump? Jumped out of an airplane? You've got a few. If ever you decide to do a parachute jump, right? And here's the inference with this model. At the top of the model, where it says mindset, the very top, the very best, is just optimum, okay? Useful. What's the most useful frame of mind given the circumstances we're in? I'm not talking positive, negative. I'm not talking happy, sad. I'm talking useful, not very useful, right? Not helpful. So if you're doing a parachute jump, when you're on the ground checking the parachute, be a pessimist. Be a skeptic. Be untrusting. These words make sense? In other words, if you're a pessimist and you're negative, what will you do? You'll check everything, right? How many times? Several times, right? Why? What's your desired outcome? To live through the day, right? Your short-term goal is a safe parachute. The pessimist never forgets to ask those tough questions, ever. Who packed it? Did you pack it? How many you packed before? Right? Show me the data. They have no problem with these challenging conversations. Why? Pessimist, skeptic. That's what they do, right? That is an optimum state of mind in those circumstances. It gets the job done, right? But once you get 3,500 meters, 12,000 feet up in the air, best become an optimist. Better to become an optimist now. Not because it's right or wrong, it's just more useful under the changing circumstances. Because up there, what's the pessimist still thinking? I'm going to die. It's not going to open. What if it doesn't? It might not, though. Yeah, but what if it doesn't? What if the spare one on the front doesn't work? The spare one. Hang on a minute. Why is there a spare one on the front? You know. There's nothing wrong with that mindset on the ground because it causes us to behave in a way that's conducive to our desired outcome. But up there, it has one net effect. That mindset has one net effect. It stops us doing the one thing we were there to do, which is what? Jump. To jump, right? Do we have the skills to jump up there? Sure we do. We even had the motivation when we got in the plane. But when the circumstances became difficult and challenging and uncomfortable, they have no control over their mindset. In fact, they would say the circumstances determine their mindset. It's difficult, it's challenging, and that's where they feel challenged. Now I'm going to say, I understand that. Unfortunately, we can't operate like that, because as leaders we know we can't control the circumstances. Things will change, things will be demanding, things will be challenging. The difference between you, what seems to set you apart as high performers, is your ability to respond to the circumstances. It's your ability to choose the mindset you're in spite of the circumstances, frankly. Right? And I use this model just as a brief observation. You know, everyone understands the top right-hand box. Happy days. We're winning, we're succeeding, we're feeling good, the circumstances are easy, not particularly demanding, right? Happy times. Just as easy to understand as the bottom left-hand quadrant, right? Very difficult, demanding, challenging, high-pressure situations. Nothing wrong with that, but when it's combined with a mindset which sits below the halfway line, it just creates a result. It creates an outcome which is undesirable, right? So we've all probably experienced a little bit of these too. The phrase, the choke, I'm not sure how well that translates, the choke. In sports, we hear the phrase, someone chokes, right? When someone chokes in sport, you know, a world-class tennis player just can't get the serve in, right? A world-class soccer player takes a penalty and misses the whole goal area, right? In other words, world-class performers with skills you would never question suddenly can't function. Because in those moments, their mindset shifts below the line. It's what's called an amygdala hijack. That's irrelevant. But basically, they shift down the line, and they can't function. They tighten up, and all their skills just disappear, right? We've all seen that, right? The interesting quadrants, though, are the bottom right and the top left. The bottom right-hand quadrant, and I put an image of a freight train here. Because here you've got a situation where we're standing this way, facing the future, and I'm not even looking behind. I'm not even checking anymore. Why? Because I'm still winning. I'm winning. But I'm winning because it's easy. I'm winning because the circumstances are favorable. There's no competition, right? My clients think we're great. The products are perfect, right? There's nothing challenging us here, so we're still winning. But I'm winning because of the environment, not because of my emotional state of mind. I could be tired, a bit bored, still winning. And that's okay, so long as what doesn't change? Circumstances, right? But of course, I have a nasty habit of doing that. And if the circumstances change when I'm in this complacent state, a complacent state of mind, the journey from bottom right to bottom left is rapid and disorientating. Now, look, to cut a long story short, we saw that back in 2007, 2008, right, with the financial crisis, right? Organizations were in a complacent state, and they literally fell over, right? And I'm not going to go through examples of this, right? There's one UK example, that's very brief, that may or may not make sense to you, but as a concept it will. There's a company in the UK called Woolworths. FW Woolworths was a retail store in every single town in the UK. This was everywhere. We grew up with Woolworths. It was our first place we went shopping as children, right? We loved Woolworths. We didn't even not like Woolworths. Nobody wanted them to go anywhere, right? And they literally vanished overnight, pretty much. And I spoke to one of the executives just recently, actually, who was involved in the business back then, and he said, it was so difficult, it was so demanding, the challenges we faced as an organization and as a culture, right, globally, we couldn't change the collective mindset in the business. People were so scared, thinking we're going to lose our jobs next week, and often that happened, right? People were so far below the line, we couldn't think, we couldn't operate, we couldn't create, we couldn't innovate, and they were just too slow to respond, right? And there's a lot more to the story than that. But what's interesting, and this is where you'll see yourself in the model, is some people, in spite of how difficult things are, they remain the list, right? In spite of how demanding it is as you look to the future, you still remain resilient and professional and brave and resourceful and determined and caring. And if you maintain these sorts of mindsets, you then feature in the top left-hand quadrant. Does that make sense? You stay above the line. And this puts you into a small minority. This gives you an edge. The top left-hand quadrant, we did some research going back about, 6, 7 years ago, and I'll keep this quite short because it's about sport and that may not be your interest, but we took 30 world champions, okay? And by the way, I appreciate you taking the pictures. If you want to get a copy of the deck at the end, I'm happy to give you a copy of the deck. In fact, you've got the deck at the back there, right? If you want to distribute it, that's absolutely fine. We did this project with 30 world champions, male-female split. We ran it out of Sydney, the University of Sport in Sydney. We had Olympic athletes, we had golfers, tennis players, some high-profile names, and some obscure sports. I'd never heard of some of these people. There were 30 of them, and in the previous 12 months, they'd all been rated #1 on the planet. They were the world's best at what they did in sport. And I wanted to find out what was the same. There's lots of differences between us, but what was the same with every single world champion? What always showed up in terms of who they were, how they operated, how they thought. And this was a 2-year project. We coached them all, interviewed them many, many times, and we came out with a piece of data which suggested a list of 12 things that were absolutely consistent with every single world champion. Now, I won't go through the whole list because of time, but I'll mention one of them, and we're going to test this. Without exception, they all preferred to be in the top left-hand box, not the top right-hand box. Now, you'll recognize this because of who you are and the roles you have and what you're used to dealing with and handling and expecting as high performers. You'll resonate with this. They preferred to be in the top left. Don't get me wrong, we'd all take a little bit of top right every now and then. Nice and easy. But you wouldn't want to spend too much time there. Right? And as an organization, I'm sure, and as individuals, you reflect and go, that top left-hand box, that's where it's at. Now, my question to you is why? Why would you prefer to be in the top left-hand box, which is challenging? It's not easy, it's difficult, rather than the top right-hand box? Because many people out there, they want to clock in and clock off for their day. They want to get through the day with as least problems as possible. Whereas high performers, you seem to want to get from the day rather than through the day. It's a very different mindset, right? So why would you rather be top left, not top right? Just 30 seconds with your neighbor. Try and explain that to each other. Why would you rather be top left, not top right? Okay, in the essence of time, I'll open the discussion out to the room just for a moment or two. So what do you think? What are your comments? Why would you rather be top left, not top right? What's the value there? You keep learning there. I don't know who said that, but you keep learning up there. You can't stop learning top left. Things move too quickly, right? You were going to say? Some people just like a challenge. They like a challenge. Something to get up for in the morning, right? And the challenge for leaders, senior people, high performers who like a challenge, one of the challenges for the leaders is not everyone that reports into you wants a challenge. Right? You're going, right, what's next? I'm excited, I'm focused. Not everyone responds quite so quickly to you. Yep.
Personal development and, growing, actually. Personal growth.
Very difficult to grow anywhere other than top left.
Yeah.
Maybe even bottom left, there might be some growth. Right? But the left-hand side of the model, the challenge is where you tend to get your growth, typically in life. Right? It's uncomfortable, but that's the way it goes. What else, top left?
You're making a difference.
You're making a difference, right? Without exception, if you're over there and you're succeeding, something good's happening. You're dealing with difficult things and there's progress being made, for sure. Innovation, change, right? What else, top left?
A bit more efficient with time.
Say again?
A bit more efficient with time.
Yeah, you don't waste time up there. You don't waste time. You pay attention to what's happening, right? You can't sit back for too long because you'll suddenly find yourself in the bottom left, right? Okay. The sense of achievement, this came out of the data. The sense of achievement is disproportionate, top left compared to top right. Because you know it's down to what? It's because of what? It's because of you, effectively, right? When resilience and things like confidence, you can't give somebody confidence. It's a misnomer. You can excite people, of course, but you can't give them confidence, resilience, certainty. You can only get that from spending time on the left-hand side of the model and coming back over going, I did it. I found a way, reflecting on that, right? So when you go back over there, which you inevitably will, you're a little more prepared next time round, right? That's resilience. That is confidence. So the interesting part of the model, and I'll briefly mention this, this guy, who's this guy top left? Do you recognize this guy? So Boris Becker, been in the news for the wrong reasons a little bit lately. He lost a bit of money, went bankrupt. But anyway, back in the late 80s, mid-80s, this guy was one of the best tennis players in the world, right? And I was a bit younger than me, but I was quite inspired by watching him play. He hit the scene at 17. He wins Wimbledon. It was unheard of, right? Came back 3 years later, won it again. Staggering. He had a great 10 years. Top 5 on the planet for about 10 years. He played in a tournament in 1989, 1990. And he said something at the end of this tournament that, transformed my business and my team that I was working with at the time. And I've always told this story about what he said, what Becker said. I saw him at Heathrow Airport about 3 years ago. I was in the business lounge, and he walked in and sat pretty much behind me. And I was with a couple of colleagues. And I went, it's Boris Becker. It's Boris Becker. And they're going, yeah, I know. It's Becker. And I was getting a little too enthusiastic. And I said, no, I tell a story about Boris Becker at conferences. I have done for 20 years, right? And I said, problem is, I'm not sure that I'm getting it right. I'm not sure that I'm not making a little bit of it up, and maybe elaborating. It's been 20 years, I thought, when am I ever going to get a chance to validate my story? He sat behind me, and they're going, ask him. I didn't really want to bother him, because you must get that all the time. I did bother him. I tapped him on the shoulder and said, excuse me, Mr. Becker, do you mind if I ask you something? And he was very pleasant. He was very nice. He said, yeah, what do you need? I said, I was saying to my colleagues, I tell a story about you. I have done for 20 years at conferences. I'm not sure that I'm not making a bit of it up. I thought, perhaps can I verify the story with you? He looked a bit concerned as to which story it was going to be. He's got a reputation, right? I said, no, it's a tennis story. I said, back in 1899, they started a new tournament in Germany called the Grand Slam Cup. And the Grand Slam Cup was the top 8 performers from the year, from the major tournaments, from the Aussie Open, the French, the US, and Wimbledon, would come together and they'd compete for a winner-take-all prize. 7 days tennis, the winner took everything. It was $2 million, the richest tournament by a mile, and they all wanted it. Especially Becker. Why? It was in Munich, home patch. So he was known for saying, I want the Munich Cup, I want the Munich Cup. Anyway, I said, you're playing Pete Sampras, 89-90, right? Pete Sampras at that time had just hit the scene that year, won a major, right? And he was about to go and dominate tennis for a decade. Becker was like top 2 or 3 in the world. Sampras was top 2 or 3. Anyway, they're playing together. And he's looking at me, nodding. I said, you're 2 sets to love up, best of 5. And Sampras just turned you over, 3 sets to 2. And he went, yeah, he did. Thanks for reminding me. What's your question? I said, my question is this. After the match, you were being interviewed. And I said, you said something that, genuinely, I'm not just saying this, it transformed my business and my career. And so he was kind of interested to find out what he said. I said, the interviewer said to you, what happened? You're 2 sets up. It's all over. It's yours for the taking. And he's beaten you 3 sets to 2. You must be devastated. And Becker went, look, I'm not happy. I'm a competitive guy. I wanted to win, but this tennis, these things happen. But the interviewer wouldn't let it go. He said, you must have wished that Sampras today of all days would have a bad day at the office, a drop in form, today of all days. And Becker looked at him with this curious, confused look on his face, which kind of got my attention. And he went, why? Why would I want Sampras to have a bad day? And the interviewer said, well, then you'd have won. I mean, $2 million worth of why. And you looked at him and you kind of went, oh, okay. Yeah, no, look, I don't need the money. That's what he said. I mean, nowadays he might. But back then he went, I don't need the money and I don't need the title, frankly. He said, what I need is to see this guy Sampras at his very best, under pressure. And he said, I think I saw that today. You might have noticed that fifth set, the final set, he started to serve some wide cut serve to my backhand. I just didn't know what to do with it. But I will next time. And then what he said, I wrote down and said to my team, and it blew me away. He said, I may not have won today, but I reckon I've learned how to beat this guy, and that's worth more to me than $2 million. Now, that might sound like an obvious statement to some people. To me, I was like, wow, what a mind game he's playing here, right? His strategy was to stay above the line. Becker never choked. He didn't always win, but he went for everything. He was known for it, right? And I drew it on a bit of paper and I said, you never went to that bottom left-hand quadrant, did you? He said, there's no value there. I said, no, I know there's no value there, but how would you not go there? You've just lost $2 million. He said, my manager, Ion Tiriac, who's this Romanian guy, really hard guy, he said he drilled it into me from a young age. I'd be throwing my tennis racket around the court and crying petulantly, and he'd say to me, Boris, there's no time to feel like a loser, especially when you lose. There's no time to feel like a loser. You lose a point, you better recover quickly. You lose a set, a match, a tournament, we ain't got time to muck about, right? You've got to get back to that top left-hand box. So what he started to drill into him was choking, performance anxiety is fear. It's fear of failure, right? Fear of doing something stupid, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of trying something and not getting it right, right? He said, we're going to take that out. We're playing a win-learn game, not a win-lose game. A win-learn game. You mentioned about learning, right? It's a win-learn game. Nobody's fearing winning or learning. There's no pain in that. Losing creates a bit of anxiety. So if they go, no, he said, no matter what happens, no matter what I do, my action, whatever I take after this, and whatever I'm going to do moving forward this year, whatever I do, either it's going to work and I'm going to win, or I'm going to learn from it very quickly, and therefore I'll learn how to win. There's no lose here. Now, I went, yeah, but you did lose. He said, no, I didn't. I said, no, you literally did lose, right? He went, no, I know I lost the match. I didn't lose, though. That's very different. He said, I'll look back at the end of my career and assess whether I lost. In the meantime, I'm playing win-learn, and win-learn will take me this way. And it's a simplistic observation, I know. I ran exactly the same session with the All Blacks rugby team and took them through the simple model of win-learn, take lose out of the equation. People will try things when the fear of fear disappears. Doesn't mean they always win. But I only mentioned it was his mind game. It was Becker's mind game, bless you, to stay above the line. So how do you stay above the line? That's the question. How do you, as you drive forward, thinking about your goals, your aspirations, stay above the line? How do you engage others to stay above the line when it's difficult and challenging? I put these three people here only because I interviewed them at a conference 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago perhaps. It was the Albert Hall in London. They were the named speakers on the agenda. So Buzz Aldrin was the celebrity speaker. You had Anita Roddick from The Body Shop, and obviously Richard Branson. The reason I put them on here is I asked them, how do you lead change? What is it to you, leading change? And what was interesting was, on the day you wouldn't have known, by their stories were all different, but they all said the same thing. They all said the same three things, very briefly. And I'm going to mention those three things to wrap up with. The first thing they all talked about was vision, clarity of vision, aspiration, change to what? What are you trying to move your culture towards? What are you trying to do? And I know it's obvious to you, right? So what's the vision? What does it look like in the future within this organization? What are you trying to manifest? You'd expect that to be the first thing. I'll show you one slide on vision. Watch the room. Watch what happens. I'm going to ask you if you can see something on the slide, okay? It's very obvious. It's an arrow. Not this one, but this one. Can you see the arrow? Mm-hmm. Okay, now watch the room. Watch what happens. Try not to help anybody. Who can see the fly? The fly. So we've got two people can see the fly. Okay, who can't see the fly? I say fly, Flieger in German, la mosca in Spanish, the fly. Who can see it? For those that can see the fly, 6 people, it's pretty big when you see it, right? It's pretty clear when you get it. Who still can't see it? nice and high with your hands. So the majority still can't see it, and that's okay. But the fly represents the future. The fly is the vision. The fly is where you're going. If you can't see the fly, you can't connect to it. It's abstract, because the future is abstract, right? But if you can see it, that's why we have visions, it creates some energy around it. So one last time, watch the room. Who can see the fly? There's about maybe 7 or 8. For those that can see it, for those that can, what's the matter with the others? Why can't they see the fly? Who still can't see the fly? Are you trying to be awkward? A simple question. Can you see? I've got half the room can see it. This is the future. This is the vision. This is Unilever. This is what you're creating as leaders. You've got to be able to see it, right? So who can? Last time, who can? For those that can, it's pretty clear when you get it, right? Yeah. Who still can't see it? Honestly can't see it? Now, let me ask you a question. Any of you start to think, I don't even want to see it? I'm not even interested. Get on with it. See, after a while, if you can't see it, it becomes irritating. It becomes challenging. It's like when you communicate to the team, here's the vision. We've been away for a week, reassessing, refocusing. Here's where we're going, people. Let's get inspired and excited. You communicate the vision, and someone says to you, I got it. Fly. I can see it. Fly. I'm with you. I'm in. Or I'm out. But at least I can see the vision. Some will say to you, what? Fly? I don't see it. I'm not getting it. I don't get it. Right? And you go, no, well, sit down, let's talk some more, and you have another conversation, and you reassess, and you reaffirm, and you engage and communicate. Oh, I get the fly now. Can you still see it? Yeah. Question, was it always there? Yes. It was always there. But even though it was always there, didn't mean we saw it, right? And if we couldn't see it, we couldn't connect to it, couldn't engage with it, couldn't be inspired by it. In fact, after a while, it became irritating, right? You communicate to the team the vision, some will say, I can see it. Some will say, I don't get it. I don't understand. So you have to explain. Your worst nightmare as a leader is when you communicate the vision and someone says to you, what, the fly, the vision? Yeah, I can see it, yeah. And they get to the coffee break and they're going, I couldn't see it. I didn't want to tell them. They seemed so enthusiastic, right? That's a nightmare. Because, I know the words, right? But if they can't see it, they can't engage with it, they can't be inspired by it, they can't connect to it, right? So part of our challenge as leaders, of course, is to engage people by helping them see the vision, not just having a vision, helping them connect to the vision. Now, that's not enough, because then you've got to drive down to the next point, which is around belief. They have to have a sense of certainty. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. It's abstract. But if I really believe it's going to happen, I don't know why this makes a difference, and I've looked at this long and hard. Does it actually matter if I believe in it? If I just know it, isn't that enough? It just seems to make a difference. High performers, you seem to find a way to create certainty around something which isn't certain. It's abstract. But there's something about the way you do that. I'll show you one slide on belief before I start to wrap this up. One slide on belief. I could do a day on one slide on this content of beliefs. My mother sent me this. She thought it was hilarious. She thought it was funny, right? I'll show it to you. It's a little bit of a generalization, but it kind of sums up the difference between when you have a belief, what it very quickly affects is your mindset. And your mindset will affect what you do, your behaviors. And our behaviors get our results. So there's something in this. If belief drives mindset and mindset drives behaviors and behaviors drive results, there's a connection here between beliefs and results. That's the point. Ready? Here we go. It's a bit obvious, I know. So she thought it was funny. My mother said it to me, as the father sees it, as the child sees it, as the mother sees it. Now, my only observation is those three people in this story have one thing that's different, a belief. Their expectation is different. They're all in the same situation. There's only one reality. This is all pre-throw. There's no throw yet. This is all about expectation. But the father in the story, now it could be the mother, look, I'm just a bit sexist, right? But the father, he goes, I believe what? I'll catch my child. And because he believes that, he feels certain. It doesn't make it true, by the way, but he just feels certain. Therefore, he'll probably take action, right? The child believes what? I'll probably be okay. I'm not sure. I'm a little nervous. It's the first time, after all. I've got no references, but I'm 60-40 in favor of the big guy. He'll look after me. So the child doesn't feel calm. They feel excited and nervous because they're thinking, probably going to be okay. I'm not certain. So the feeling is uncertain. What does the mother believe? Disaster. You're going to kill my child. And she's equally certain about that as the father is certain the opposite will happen. So she feels what? Fear, anxiety, stress. Now, she's not wrong. There's no right or wrong here. It's understand the belief is driving the mindset. Who's right? It depends what you want. It depends what your vision is. If your vision is to never throw a child in the air, ever, then she's got the best belief system. Because that'll cause the behavior called don't throw a child in the air, right? If you suddenly feel the need to throw a child in the air, he's got the best belief system. Because it supports his aspiration, right? There's a link between vision and belief, and it drives behavior. And I'll finish with one last analogy, just briefly. I worked with a CEO back in just over a year ago, the December of the year before last. CEO's irrelevant. It was in a meeting like this. During the coffee break, he said, Jim, I'm running the London Marathon in 5 months. Right? I'm training for the London Marathon. I'm starting to get a bit stressed by the whole thing. I was reading in a paper that someone died last year. Someone dropped dead. And I'm kind of thinking, okay, yeah, I've heard that too. He says, how do I stay motivated? And I'm thinking, I've no idea how you stay motivated, right? I'm always thinking, why are you asking me? He said, just, my mindset, I can't stay focused. How do I stay focused? I said, okay. He said, problem is that I'm no athlete. It's the first time for me. Now, when he said I'm no athlete, that's an identity statement. That's a belief about who he is. Think about this. I believe I'm no athlete, and I've got a marathon in 5 months. Do you see a problem with that? There's a disconnect between my vision and my belief. I said, okay, look, I've got 2 minutes on this. Here's what you do. Whenever you're socializing at networking events, corporate dinners, when someone says to you, so what are you into? What do you do outside of work? And you go, well, I play a bit of golf. I've got the family. Oh, and by the way, I'm a marathon runner. I want you to include, I'm a marathon runner. And you went, I haven't done it yet. I said, no, I understand that. I want you to start telling the truth in advance. Tell the truth early. I am a marathon runner. I said, because what do marathon runners do? What do? They run marathons. You'd expect it in your diary. That wouldn't freak you out, right? Okay. I said, have you got one in your diary? He said, yes. I said, why? That's because you're a marathon runner. He said, and he's looking at me. I said, what else do marathon runners do? What are the behaviors that they engage in? They train. How often? 5, 6 times a week? Right? I said, who does that? I tell you who does that. Marathon runners. I said, are you doing that? He said, I am actually. I said, tell you why. You're a marathon runner. What else do? They read magazines on running, like Runner's World. You reading magazines on running? He said, I am actually. I said, who does that? He went, marathon runners? Correct, right? You're a marathon runner. Don't wait to run the marathon to give yourself the label. Set the vision and define the person who's achieving the vision and start thinking about who that person is. I am a leader. I'm a leader. That's a set of words. But I want to feel what that feels like as a truism way in advance of it happening. I am achieving X, whatever the vision is. How you write that out is that connection to how you feel. I am a, not I'm going to. I know it's just semantics, but the brain processes it to a point of certainty. It feels certain. You just seem to find a way to achieve these things. One last thing, and I'm done. We started off with a random list of 20 words. Okay? I want you to write one thing down to finish. One thing. Any way you like. As long as you can see it, somewhere. Here we go. O-P-P UNITYNOWHERE. One long set of letters, which spells a specific set of words, which as a group I'd like you to say nice and loud. Ready? So what does it say? Is nowhere. Sorry? Nowhere. I thought I spelled opportunities nowhere. Now here. Nowhere. Now here. Nowhere. Now. Both could be true. Both stand up, right? Both could be defended. But whichever one you decide, nowhere, now here. Nowhere, now here. Whatever your team believe, whatever the culture backs, right? Nowhere, now here. It's a game changer. It's an instant shift above the line, right? It's challenging, it's demanding, of course it is, and you'll set your plans and actions, but if your overriding mindset is opportunities now here, not nowhere, it just seems to propel activity. It affects energy, right? So we started off last 30 seconds with a set of what? We've all got goals, right? Corporate plans, 3+1, corporate visions, big piece of? Okay, who was here? Things will get in the way in the next 6 to 12 months. They just do, right? But Edison was innovative, challenging, asking better questions, getting outside the box. Creates what? Energy. You need energy to break through the wood. So you kick the light bulb, where does it go? What do the crowd do? And on comes a, holding a The crowd is the best practice, where you get your ideas from, where you network and you ask people, how are you doing this? How are you achieving that? Right? They're in the room, right? High performance, right? You get their recipes. I want their processes, right? You take the cake. How many candles? 8. Not relevant. You give the cake to who? Okay, for the last time, I'll cue you when you're ready. So for the last time, what did the first fan do? Yay! Okay, yeah, one more, a bit more American. What did the first fan do? Okay, second fan starts to? That's above and below the line. What pops out the second fan? What you see in your mind's eye, what you think about, what you focus on is taking you above the line and me below. The quality of our thinking. The eye lands in the... And it starts to... Out comes a bubble shaped like a... What's running around, buzzing around the leaf? Okay, is it important to have belief? Belief? No? Okay, right. So that took me a long time, by the way, bee and leaf. Okay, the bee starts to vomit lots of... Into a... What's in the pot? How many shells? Is it important to believe we've always got more potential? What would you have done? Okay, no matter. Okay. On top of the 10th shell was a... Okay, so if we get the right alignment of vision, belief, and behaviors, that's where we start to move towards hitting the target. And there was one word, the word... Because opportunity is... Okay, thanks for joining in. Thanks for playing. I hand back to you. I'll see you next time around. Cheers.